Hello? I got your hot biscuits. Oh, and your breakfast. And your breakfast, too.
Hey, get in here. Dallas is about to start.
Welcome to the Ewing Barbecue, where we talk about Dallas. My name is Mary.
And I'm Sarah.
I'm Josh, holding this J.R. Ewing bourbon here.
And I'm Melanie. There she goes.
And tonight, we have some very special guests.
Well, hi, I'm Charlene Tilton.
Ladies first, and I'm Leigh McCloskey, Mitch.
Yay! We're so excited to have y'all here.
Yay.
Welcome.
Yay! Yes, and they are here tonight because tonight we are talking about Season 4, Episode 12, The End of the Road, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Will you marry me? Let's have a drink and talk about where we go from here. Acapulco? Hawaii?
Now that your Ray Krebs is running South Fork, Gary will never be back. I'll never forgive you for what you've done to him.
I'm married.
I will. So, the real JR has finally come home.
It was written by Leonard Katzman, directed by Irving J. Moore, and aired January 23rd, 1981.
And
Holy macaronis. Okay.
yeah, that's a good 40 years ago.
I was 6.
Yes.
6 years old.
Got here quickly, didn't we?
I was 5. This was actually the week of my 5th birthday, just to let you know.
It's the week before my birthday, Mary. You know it's next week.
Mine was in September, but this episode actually ranked number 2. This episode ranked number 2 for the week with a 36.4 rating, and it was the first time that the show was not number 1 for the week. And Monty Markham made his debut, and he's been on Baywatch,
Golden Girls.
Yep, $6 Million Man, Melrose Place,
Collinsworth.
and well, we'll just get right into it, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to talk about, like, what's happening kind of in the other parts of the episode, Josh? Summarize the non-Lucy and Mitch parts?
I'll fly through that. Okay, so in part 1, Bobby was caught in a moral dilemma, wanting to honor his contract with Brady York to get the $12 million to pay Jordan Lee. JR continues to plot with Luella between the sheets. Meanwhile, Pam is avoiding Alex Ward, who is actually kind of a sleazy guy for going after a married woman.
He's totally hitting on her all the time.
Yeah.
Can you blame her? Look at Victoria. I mean, hello.
I know, right?
But
She's gorgeous.
you got Liz Craig right
and
there.
Bobby's actively ignoring her.
JR and Sue Ellen are flying along pretty well. They're kind of like Boris and Natasha on crack, as they're all turned on by Bobby's troubles because JR wants to get back to the top of the heap.
And Sue Ellen loves when JR's bad.
Yes.
Loves it.
Yeah.
Who played Alex Ward?
Joel Fabiani, who went on to Dynasty. Meanwhile, Dave Culver's campaign is taking aim at the Tecapa project. And Lucy has ulterior motives for having Donna come to the wedding because she thinks that Donna and Ray belong together.
Solid.
Yeah.
I kind of
And
That's
Because Donna is dating Cliff at this point.
Right, and I totally forgot about that until I rewatched
I
it.
did too.
and that's really encapsulates what's going on.
Good Lord, Donna dated Cliff. Everyone dated it. Oh, it was just one.
Yeah, it's all. It's almost like a soap opera. What?
I always wanted to see if Lucy and Cliff had any.
Well, it'd be better than Lucy and Ray. Just saying.
Yeah. Call me her name.
Wasn't it Lucy at the roller rink during his election thing?
Oh, that's right.
Remember the rainbow suspenders? This was like 2 seasons ago. We were like, we love the suspenders.
With you and Carlene Crockett, Muriel.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that is that, and let's get right into
All right, so we're going to get into their scenes, right?
Yeah, let me share the screen.
Charlene and Leigh, was there anyone on the show that you didn't have particular scenes with
Chemistry?
that you wish you had had an opportunity to work with more?
I certainly for me, yeah. I thought Patrick and Larry were quite extraordinary.
Patrick and who?
And Larry, I just there was quite that type of dynamic was very fun, but
Can you guys hear this one?
Yeah, it's
my side of it.
Mitchell, you're really being stupid. I mean, what'd they do that was so terrible?
They don't care what I want. They were trying to buy me.
Did it occur to you they might have been thinking about Lucy's happiness? You can't blame them for wanting the
Lee's
best for
hair.
her, just like I would for Afton. And I don't see what you think is so wonderful about this crummy apartment of yours anyway.
Afton, I don't think it's wonderful, but I can afford it. Now, all I'm saying
It's a
is I
lovely
think that
feather.
Lucy and I ought to live on what we can afford, not the Ewing's money. Hell, we all lived all right on what Daddy could afford.
Oh, sure. We did just fine. We did so fine the day after he died, I had to go out and get a job to keep the two of you alive. Now, listen, your pa was a fine man, but he didn't have a chance. Now, don't you think that he wouldn't have taken the help if he had had the offer? Mitch, it is no disgrace to be poor. But on the other hand, there's no reason to be proud of it either.
Now, I'm not saying that I'm proud of it. I just believe that I'm right.
Well, maybe for once you ought to think of somebody besides you. Have you thought about what Lucy might want? What might be best for Lucy? Now, I agree. You shouldn't take that job. You should stay in medicine. But, Mitch, please, go back. Marry Lucy. If the condo goes along with her, is it really that bad?
just take it.
And this is what we were talking about last time was that, if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, cool.
But money doesn't buy happiness.
Leigh, I think you should have listened to Mitch should have listened to his mama. Haven't you thought about what Lucy wants? Haven't you thought about what's best for Lucy? Come on.
And I love the hair, by the
Yes.
way. The hair was
So good.
Love it.
So obviously
Love
we
it.
have Anne Francis and Audrey Landers in that scene. Talk about Anne Francis.
Anne was and Audrey, I thought were both quite marvelous, just scene partners. Anne, I had known because I sort of grew up seeing things with her in it, so it was interesting to work with her. And then Audrey, I just very much enjoyed her and thought she was just a special lady. So it was all good. And I'm sort of, it's life in a sense leads you where it all becomes a type of collage. But I do remember that I enjoyed working with them. And I was very frustrated with some of the material because I agree with you. It was like I did get a little tired of, Lucy, I don't want your money. And I hope it would evolve into something. Maybe I would take a little of the money and get change it somehow and drawn into, but it's especially nowadays, he's a bit righteous.
I really would have thought they would have went and made a storyline, like you said, of this, like kind of, even if it's just kind of separate, or I don't know. But looking back,
well, a person that's righteous and in a sense puts themselves above, like I'm right, is in a way when you're creating a character, that's the character you want to see fall from their own pride. In a sense, become that which they thought they would never be because they were better than that. But, it just, there was so many different directions. But as we know with all of these things, it really depends on where the writers think, oh, this is so
Now,
it is what
you
it
all
is.
see how philosophical and smart and brilliant Leigh is, which he was back then too. So he did all this stuff. I just showed it to the set, hit my mic, and said my line. Leigh, now that I'm older, what you're saying makes so much sense. Now I get it. Gosh, I wish we could retake the whole thing.
No.
So how old, Leigh, how old were you, like in this season, like when you were filming this?
So that was what, 81?
81.
Yeah, so I was...
Sorry, I hate math on the spot. I'm like...
26 years old.
26? Okay.
Yeah, I was one of... Yes, I was 26. And Charlene, how old were you? I was married already. And,
you were married to your beautiful Carla, who is also just as gorgeous and intelligent and thoughtful as Leigh is. I mean, I just always remember Carla, your beautiful wife, as just being so brilliant and lovely and kind. Your whole family. I remember Leigh being on the set. You were reading these big, thick books on astronomy and things like this. And I'm a voracious reader, but I certainly cannot read while I'm filming. I can't read a book while I'm working on the set. So.
And what was your process to get into character, Charlene, when you showed up? Did you isolate yourself? Did you go over lines? Did you mingle?
No. I knew from the beginning of the description originally of Lucy was that she was a manipulative little sex pot, born with a silver spoon and has everything that money could buy. But JR drove her mother and father away. But having never known my own father, I'd never even seen a picture of him. And my mother being in and out of mental institutions and being raised in foster home, I knew that was the crux of Lucy, not the trappings, not the Ewing Oil, not the money. I knew what drove Lucy was really wanting to fill that void, wanting that love and that attention. And Lucy went around trying to find it with different men. And when Lucy found Mitch, I don't know if you remember this, Leigh, the first time that Lucy and Mitch meet, Lucy is stumbling out of the nightclub drunk, and Mitch is the valet.
The valet, yep.
And he grabs my keys and puts me in a taxi. And that was, one of the first times that I think Lucy saw somebody without an ulterior motive, doing something to take care of her. And without wanting anything. And so I and then the first time you see Leigh's gorgeous face, I remember Leonard Katzman saying, "Oh my gosh, wait till you meet Leigh McCloskey. He is so handsome." And he was, and he still is. So.
Well, that was one of my questions. Sometimes you have an immediate, I don't know if chemistry is the right word, but once you, met each other, did everything just flow? Did you have chemistry acting together on and off screen? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you work well together and you enjoyed,
Yeah, and I don't know, Charlene, would you agree? Because what is very interesting is that every time when you have a screen relationship, and it's interesting that you were talking about your character and how you saw from her interior, in a sense, what was motivating her, not the outer trappings, but this inner need. And it's interesting about the relationship that comes in terms of the characters you're playing and the qualities of the difference between Charlene and I. As she said, we came from very different backgrounds, and I found it very interesting because it was always, in a way, how do you try and in a sense explore this with your scene partner, meaning where is this relationship that you've been cast into going to take you? And I really always found it very interesting. It was more, my frustration had more to do with the limited dialogue between us than our work together as actors, because I really admired Charlene and thought she was wonderful given half a chance. And I felt that oftentimes our scenes were given a half a chance. They weren't as, I think if they had layered us more and created more nuance, I think that there could have been really a blossoming of, in a sense, exploring more about what drove Charlene's character.
Yeah,
and also the transformation of my character away from being so judging of, in a sense, and controlling.
What do you think brought them together? Because Lucy's coming from money and
opposites attract.
I think he wanted to take care of her, but I almost feel like that's where Charlene, tell me if but that in a way, he wants to take care of her in ways that are his conditions. He's not really listening to her needs. He's saying, this is what I need you to do. So he's imposing on her. He's not really freeing her.
So
and I think that was the frustration.
If she went out and got a job on her own and earned money separate from the Ewings, would that have been a bad thing?
Lucy did. Lucy tried to become a waitress at the hot biscuit. It's a hot biscuit. Hot biscuit. Hello, I got your hot biscuits. Oh, and your breakfast too.
We're gonna go on a field trip and find the hot biscuit.
I was like, and if y'all, and I'm not expecting you to say yes to this, but if y'all have not already listened to some of the earlier episodes that we recorded, we can get a little nasty sometimes when we're talking about stuff. So, and it's usually me. Sorry. My mom was like, "Please be nice on there." I'm like, "Mother." Anyway, okay.
So wait. One more thing before we move into maybe the next scene, but Charlene, we've heard stories about your audition process and how you got the role. What about if you want to touch on that? And Leigh, how did you come into the show or hear about it or the auditioning process? And was it word of mouth or?
Yeah, I was very fortunate because I was at that part in one's career where people are offering you opportunities, and I was offered a job. They brought Barbara Miller, I think, was the casting person in Lorimar, and I had done a short-lived series called Married the First Year, actually the year I was married in '78, and we made 4 episodes for Lorimar, which also then produced Dallas. And so they knew me, and they had always admired my work. And then they came in, and they just, in a way, they told me the breakdown of the story, and that they were excited because they wanted to move toward a type of youth orientation and to really take the show where they developed the relationship between Charlene and I. And so I was I didn't know, and then they said they made it sound very interesting, and I was coached to say yes, and I did, and I'm glad I did. It's part of the.
Leigh, had you seen any episodes of Dallas before? Were you familiar with the show?
I really wasn't, and that's why I.
Listen, I'll come over and I'll show I'll show you the first 3 seasons for you and Carla. I'll have a martini and a cigarette. It'll be like Sunset Boulevard.
Oh my gosh, she feels like me, a martini and a cigarette.
And I'll show you Leigh. This is me when I was young. Okay. Yeah. You and Carla can watch.
Beautiful.
And you can watch that great episode with you and Greg Evigan riding in the shag van across the country.
Oh Lord, yes.
Oh my God, that van scared me a lot. I was like, wow.
It's fun.
I'm sure you've all done the math. Charlene, how many men did you have on the show?
A lot.
Josh, you tell me.
So far we've counted like 3 or 4.
Somebody had to have probably figure that one out.
Feels like
Lucy
a
was
Blanche Devereaux answer. Many.
Oh, it's many men.
Again, this thing around the martini.
And Charlene, you saw Greg a couple years ago at the autograph show, and I remember messaging Mario and saying, "Get a photo of them 2 together again, because the fans would love to see Lucy with her kidnapper."
Well, we did that little video.
Yes, I have that on my phone somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Should we move on to the next scene?
Yes.
Okay. I'm literally just scrubbing through this episode, so.
So you got Bobby and stuff, and I think Connie had the hots for Bobby.
Oh, look. Cute.
Did you keep any of your outfits?
Lucy?
No.
I thought you'd be studying.
I couldn't keep my mind on it.
I didn't think anything could take your mind off of it.
Well, didn't seem quite so important today.
Well, it ought to. The way you are about taking jobs, you'd better study real hard.
Now, look. Listen. You're talking about JR's job. I'd starve to death before I took that.
Or anything else from the Ewings?
Yeah, that's right. Or anything else from the Ewings. As a matter of fact, I can't even stand the name.
Well, it's my name, too.
Oh,
Get him, girl. I love it.
It wouldn't have to be, not if you married me.
Well, you'd be related to the Ewings.
Well, you can't have everything.
And the condo?
All right, the condo. For a while, but no house and no job until we can afford it. So, will you marry me?
Jump in.
Of course. Yes.
Oh.
Of course.
I just got chill bumps.
I know.
Oh, one more week and no more Mr. Ewing.
Oh.
I love
But
that
our
scene.
condo doesn't have a pool like that.
Now that was obviously on the soundstage back in California at that point.
One thing about our podcast is we have a Dallas drinking game on our podcast. And one of the things you have to drink for is if someone gets pushed into the pool. So drink, drink.
We'll drink on your behalf.
I'm almost finished.
I know.
My Egyptian licorice tea.
Woo.
That
I love
sounds
licorice
fancy.
tea.
It is a licorice tea.
What do you have
What's
there,
that?
Lee?
Lee's still muted.
He's muted.
Oh, you're muted, Lee. You're muted.
There you go.
Gatorade. You're saying
Gatorade.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lee's hitting the hard
Gatorade
stuff.
Zero. Yeah. Get the zero. There's no sugar in it. The other stuff, there's so
Exactly.
much sugar in it, you could blow off
That's
the top
right.
of your head.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lee, you know what's interesting that you had said though, when they brought you into the show and you said they wanted to focus on the younger demographic because Lucy was the one that single-handedly kept the younger demographic in. And so they brought you in, but they did nothing with us, I mean,
They did nothing with us. And also support. I was talking to the people that they said you and I received more mail than anybody. Do you know? And it just they just didn't know what to do with us, and it was really
I feel
unfortunate.
like they didn't know how to write for young people on the show, unfortunately.
No, because I sound like something out of the 40s. I'm one of those irritating men out of the 40s that is, when my wife is there, she's not going to have a job, and she's going to be at home with the children. There's going to be one breadwinner in the family. I mean, and you go, oh my God, how
As we say it in the South, she's going to be barefoot and pregnant.
Well,
and like even in the 80s, that's a bit arcane. It's just, it's almost like I do think that they were writing me. In a sense, they were trying to create a character in the conflict between us and make it about money. And it really, I think that was the problem. It didn't have the depth of it. It couldn't be about that. And if it wasn't really interesting. Because in a sense, people tuned into the show to watch rich people and their shenanigans. And in a way,
Bobby and Pam had the same thing too, where Bobby didn't want Pam to work at the store. He wanted to
Exactly.
So it was.
And,
Oh my God. He's so
he
annoying.
got pissed every time she would go off.
Yeah, but Lenny, right? He was my dad's age. So they grew up in the Second World War. A lot of my dad was born in 1912. A lot of these people that they were writing in the 80s and directing in the 80s, but where they were really from. We had directors, if you remember, that really had a connection to the golden age of Hollywood. We had Vincent Sherman, and he had done movies with Bette Davis and Errol Flynn. So there was this bridge. It was a very interesting time because it was sort of the last of the great, sort of those that still were connected to the golden age of Hollywood. But I think a lot of them, that the thing about Dynasty, about Dallas was that you look at it and the plots have almost a ring of something of the 50s. In a sense, the values of women in this way and men in this way, and the tension between them being about the character rather than something that's actually, let's resolve this. It's sticking.
You know what's interesting, though, you saying that with our the climate in the world right now, our political and cultural climate, because Dallas is on Amazon Prime now, so since the pandemic, Dallas is being watched worldwide by kids that weren't even born when I was on, filming the show, and people are revisiting it. So I started watching it, and I'm up to like season 3. I'm not watching it every day, but I will tell you this though: what you just said, Leigh, it still holds up, even in today's climate. I'm watching it. And it's such a good show. Larry Hagman's performance as JR consistently is probably hands down some of the best acting ever in the history of television. I mean, just his little subtleties and nuances. The show is so good, and I haven't watched it, and I haven't gotten to season 4. When Mitch and Lucy got married, I haven't gotten there yet, but. I agree with you, Leigh. Also, as the character of Lucy, I was so young when I started, and then as Charlene got older and as Lucy got older, they didn't know they didn't know how to make that transition from teenager to young womanhood. They didn't know what to do with me.
See, I thought you really could have, because I think that Mitch's thing was, I wanted you to, from my conceit, to grow up, in a sense, take responsibility. But that to me could have been this whole dynamic about coming into womanhood and, in a sense, into true power as a woman, rather than being ordered. It would have been transformational for both of us. And I agree with you. I think, like, when you talk about, like, JR and whatnot, I think that the spine of the show was really well articulated, and I think that some of the problems were, like with us, I do think they just didn't quite know how to make the next step, and I wish I had been more proactive, but at that time I always thought, well, I'll let the writers write, the producers produce, and I'll act, rather than rolling up my sleeves and going, well, what if we did this, which I probably would have done had I been a bit older, but it's you live and learn. Because I think there's a lot of potential.
What's interesting, what you're saying, though, is that is interesting. I bet they would have listened to you, because Dallas did touch on some things. For example, when Lucy was engaged to marry Kit Mainwaring, who had to come out of the closet and confess to her and say, I love you, Lucy. I can't marry you because I love you and I am gay and it's not fair. And I got to go back in the closet. And I said, and that was so ahead of its time. Or when Lucy was raped and got pregnant and had an abortion. I mean, those things back then were not dealt with. So, Leigh, I think had you spoken up, they might have actually listened to you, because even though the climate was different then as far as women, and the woman's place and where does a woman go, I don't know. They might have listened to you.
They could have dragged Lucy into Ewing Oil.
That's what I wanted. I wanted them to put Lucy into Ewing Oil somehow.
That would have been amazing.
Let you come in and be like a badass,
Lucy ended up with 25%, I think, of Ewing Oil. And they just ignored it for the rest.
Right. I know.
They could have done so much with that.
You could have been like Nicolette Sheridan's character on Knots Landing, more in the business sense, and gotten yourself into a lot of the storylines that way. I mean, you controlled your father's voting rights.
And you would have been married to a rich doctor. It would have all worked out perfect. But I don't, like you said, I don't think they knew how to.
They didn't.
And
I did that with several characters, but Lucy was the worst.
And where was Mitch after Pam's accident?
I think they kept her. They had a framework for the maturity of your character. And I think that's what it really, you could have continued to really take on more and more as you did. Just as you say, storyline with rape and whatnot. But it's so interesting what, looking back now in retrospective, because it is done. But it's intriguing to think about all of the the things that went into the decisions, and and what was paid attention to.
I will say though, us jumping in the pool was pretty darn cute.
It was
adorable.
I thought that was very sweet.
That was a chill box scene.
A little side note, in the Return to South Fork that you produced with Henry Winkler in 2004, there was a scene where they said you had never been thrown in the pool, but Bobby threw you in a few episodes earlier when you were asking about what to do.
Yeah, we just watched it from season 4.
What to do about, you were always asking everybody's advice about Mitch and everything, and Bobby said, do what you feel. Like right now, I feel like throwing you in the pool. And he picked you up and threw you in the pool.
I remember that. I remember. Oops.
Who didn't end up in the pool?
And that's why it's in the drinking game.
What was the dynamic there between JR and Lucy? Why did they hate each other so much?
I could never figure out why he cared so much about Lucy. Like, it was
like why he didn't.
Not, like why he was so like, like he'd try to interfere. Like,
Because
she's not doing this, she's not doing that, and it's like, she's not yours. Like,
because Gary Ewing, the middle brother, Lucy's father, JR had in his mind was Miss Ellie's favorite son. And me being there was a constant reminder of Gary. And Larry Hagman said this early on, I think it was our first season, and there's a scene by the pool, and I'm in a little pink bikini, and I have words with JR, and I walk away, and JR just starts leering at me, with those eyebrows of his, and he's like leering after me lustful, and Irving Moore, the director, goes, cut. You got the face.
Right, abort.
Take 2, Charlene. Larry does the same thing, starts walking me, and Larry said that's when he really found how low JR could go. And they kept it in the show. Yep. You watch him watching Lucy walk away like lustfully.
He was
but he said that was the minute he knew JR had no boundaries.
He was leering at Pam in the pool in one episode during the sitting by the pool.
Yeah. That's okay.
Several.
This
better. Yeah. Right.
Josh, this is like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
But Larry told me that. He said that's when I knew that JR had no limits.
That's awesome. I love that.
Oh, God.
Wow.
So in a scene coming up, Gary and Val arrive at the airport, and it's interesting in this episode that we never see a scene of Gary and Val interacting with Mitch.
Yep, not one.
And this happens to be...
They talk about how excited they are to meet Mitch, and then they never actually meet Mitch, at least not on camera.
And it happens to be Valeen's last episode in reality until 2013 at South Fork. Yeah, talk about Joan and Ted. I mean, obviously, Charlene, you had a relationship working with them, and you went on to Knots Landing for an episode as well. Was there any talk of showing up more on Knots Landing? Because all this time they had Lucy looking for her parents, and then finally they get back together. They're out in California, and one episode, and that's it.
I know. Fans of Knots Landing used to ask all the time. Ask David Jacobs, "Where's Lucy?" And it just ended up becoming completely separate. So I have no answers.
Do you want to go to the next scene?
Bold.
You can't run away forever.
Bring it there, Bobby.
I like that Lucy has like a rock band at her wedding.
Where you been, Bobby? Better get yourself changed.
I am, Daddy, I am. It's almost time, Lucy. Before you go, darling, there's an old tradition that we have to keep. And for something old, you're wearing your grandma's wedding dress. And for something new, Billy, your daddy and I bought you these for your wedding. Mama, they're beautiful. Oh, thank you, Mama. You're welcome, darling. And something borrowed. I was holding this handkerchief the day Bobby and I were married. I want you to have it, baby. Thank you, Pam. And a bride without a blue garter just isn't a bride. Please. So, Ellen, thank you. Mama, would you put this on? Sure, darling. Here. I'm dressed there. There you go. Okay. It's time, baby.
Oh.
I love you, Mama.
There's Muriel.
How southern are these bridesmaid dresses?
Don't make fun, Melanie.
I'm not. They're just adorable.
Obviously a soundstage at this point.
Yeah, this is the most soundstagey scene I've ever seen on the show. I very much noticed Lucy's tan pantyhose. They're very tan.
That 80s hair. And there you are with Ted.
I think Ted Shackelford is so handsome. I just said that out loud.
He looks almost exactly like my father-in-law, so that's
I
weird.
saw that picture that you just...
Yeah.
It's a weird thing for me.
People used to come up to him.
So this was obviously the first wedding on the show.
Oh, yeah.
The first of many.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together here in the sight of God and in the face of this company to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony. And to this holy estate, these two persons present now come to be joined. Any man can show just cause why they may not lawfully be joined together. Let him now
Alan
speak,
Beam stands up in the back of the wedding.
forever hold his peace. Now please join right hands.
Oh, they're so cute. Like a Barbie and Ken
Take
doll.
this woman to be your wedded wife.
Absolutely adorable.
And do you
They come on the top of the cake.
to be her faithful and loving husband in sickness and in health, in prosperity and in adversity, and through every change and condition in life, until death do you part? And do you, Lucy Ann, take this man to be
Well,
your
even
husband,
I was thinking Jerry. Even
Ooh,
like we don't
naughty,
usually do
naughty.
that.
to be
After.
for him
JR's,
a faithful and loving wife,
JR's eyeing the kinfolk.
then in accordance with your solemn promise made to each other, having signified and sealed the same by the giving and receiving of a ring. Now, therefore, by my authority as a
Man,
minister,
everybody's eyeing
Those
someone they're
wandering
not married
eyeballs,
to.
yeah.
and in me by the great state of Texas, I now pronounce you man and wife.
Wow.
Make this
Oh. Pause it right there. Right on the logo. So that was the first wedding on the show. Charlene, you had an interesting story about something that happened on the way to filming.
Yes. Well, let me tell you, 3 days before the wedding, I'm at a restaurant, and Leigh, I don't know if you remember, Steve Martin and Bernadette Peters were filming the movie Pennies from Heaven at the soundstage across from us.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's right.
a big musical. And I had run into them. They were at a restaurant, and they said, "Yeah, we saw you. Come over and watch us filming." I go, "Oh wow, oh my gosh, we're doing this big wedding, and we're going to have crane and everything, and all these extras." And I went on and on about this big spectacular. So I go to their set. There's like 5,000 cranes I was doing a full-fledged musical, with the dancers on the ceiling and everything else.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was 3 days before me and my big mouth. And then on the way to the filming the actual wedding, I knew there were a lot of people, and so I just said I'm going to get there to the set early. And I was in a horrible car accident. Somebody ran a red light and T-boned me on the passenger side, and I was unconscious and I was bruised and battered. But the ambulance came and they were going to take me to Cedars-Sinai Hospital. I said, "No, you got to take me to MGM Studios." They looked at me like I was I was really delusional. I said, "No, I'm getting married," and they really thought I was crazy. No, understand. I got to go film this. We can't postpone this day. You got to take me. So they did. But yeah, I can see it in my face, like walking down the aisle with Ted. I was like this. I was in really bad shape, and that they had two doctors staying with me that whole day. They just kind of kept me off to the corner, kept taking my blood pressure and checking my heart and all that.
That's some good work ethic.
Really? Dang, Charlie.
Very dedicated.
Yes.
Whoa.
Could you imagine? I mean, oh my gosh.
That never would have flown now. They'd be all like, "Against medical advice, blah, blah, we're taking you.
I would have been like, Stanford's son. Oh, God.
But Victoria, because my car was totaled and, they were going to have a driver, Victoria said, "No, honey." So she took me home and I stayed at her house. She goes, I don't want you spending the night. You got a concussion. I want to make sure. So I went to her house and stayed the night with her. And
I'm glad someone was looking after you. That could have been bad.
Yeah.
Well, I think we ended up looking after each other, having some wine or something.
I love fun facts. Do you happen to remember what kind of car it was that you totaled?
Yes, my white Mercedes.
Oh, you loved the car, didn't you? That always happens. You always wreck the favorites.
God. That.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was watching the scene, remembering the thing about the wedding is those are never much fun for the actors because people stand around and stand around and stand around, and then you get a chance to be on film and you say, "I do," or "Yes," or "Look at her," or whatever it is. And in those days, speaking of wine, I just remember a lot of the people's eyes you might notice were a little glazed because there was a hefty lunch, let's put it that way. And most people had nothing to say, which prompted a type of, well, maybe I'll have a second glass.
I actually remember it was actually 10 years ago today, Charlene, that we were filming. I was an extra in the episode where they did the barbecue on the new show where Bobby was selling the ranch. And I just remember the whole process of being on there from 6 a.m. till after 6 p.m. and most of your scenes wind up on the cutting room floor. And I'm not sure a lot of the fans out there know what goes into filming these large scenes like this.
It's glamorous, isn't it? Hey, it's showbiz.
Exactly. And that happened to be a very cold day because I remember they had all the jackets that everyone was wearing. Julie Gonzalo, everybody, they would just take them off at the last second. But describe for the listeners out there the process of such a large scale scene. And were they fun having all the cast together, or was it too much work, or was it just...
I don't know. There's a lot of, you're basically called to sets. Everyone is in different places, and then everyone sort of congregates. And most of that is just trying to get it right because there are so many bodies. It's sort of like really just trying to hit your marks and get it done. I mean, that's especially like when you read a scene, you look at a scene like there are 14 people at a dinner table. That's it usually looks fun on screen, but making those types of scenes are oftentimes really just just it's molasses. You know it's going to be, you do it. And that's what the wedding, I remember the wedding took a long time to do. So, that's where your professionalism kicks in and goes, well, it's my job. I'll do it.
And, I know a show that did a lot of that sort of thing was, I don't know if you were all familiar with St. Elsewhere when that was on the air in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
They had a lot of scenes in the hospital that overlapped each other and went in and out of the cafeteria, and the camera would just swing and follow different people. And it seemed like they didn't cut for maybe 4 different scenes, and they'd end up on the other side of the building. So it's just a lot of coordinating that must have gone into that.
That almost sounds like how they ended up doing the West Wing.
Yeah, a lot of straight time, right? Where they're just using one camera catching. Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of it is like a wedding. You're sort of standing there, or you have this very sort of almost regimented thing. A lot of times it's interesting with Steadicam because if somebody, you are trying to stay within the life of the character within these different. So it's a very interesting demand. I don't think it's almost like that's what I find and always found interesting as a performer was really just the unique demands of sort of being professionally showing up and doing what was needed without, in a way, just trying to keep it smooth, to keep it moving. Do you remember I didn't know you were so injured, Charlene. It's been so long, maybe I did then, but that's really terrible. That's very horrifying about being in that accident.
Oh yeah, it was, well, that day, I didn't go around telling anybody. I just was off to the corner. They had me with 2 doctors the whole day, and they just kept monitoring me. And
was that a hard day? It was a hard day physically. Was it even more hard to get the energy to perform?
Oddly enough, just because, like you said, it was just mainly sitting around and waiting and treating everyone, and then just walk down the aisle and say I do, and so. But yeah, it was just crazy timing for sure.
Yeah. But I have to say, you did look beautiful. We do look like the images on the top of the wedding cake.
Yes.
I see
you totally do.
Ken and Barbie.
So Barbie and Ken.
Yeah. Bride and groom. I just it's. I won't go into the story, but it's a funny symbol in my life. I have to say, it's this. It wouldn't make sense to tell the story, but I really love to be able to look back and go, there was that moment they captured with us. And in a time, as we know, where Dallas, because of that time in the 80s, was before there were all of the channels. So there was this real focus. It was no wedding. It was like Luke and Laura, right? And then Mitch and Lucy. And, so somewhere there's that, the Uber weddings where millions watch.
This was one of them.
Obviously, I wanted to touch on Jim Davis. Obviously, he was starting to take on symptoms of his illness at the time that you could kind of tell in the filming. What was it like on set there, and just be in Jim's presence and what you remember about that time period. If
one thing that I'm very grateful for was that I was there for a season, his last season, because he died at the end, and the funeral was for Jim. And I feel so honored to have, and I asked him, I said, because he and his wife were really beautiful, and they really were sort of the heart of everything. I mean, everyone loved her. He was, and his wife too. They were just like everyone's, parents. They were so beautiful, and they'd lost their daughter, and so there was this whole just bonding of deep empathy with Jim and his wife, and he was the soul of the thing. I mean, I really did. I felt that he was the soul of the show when I came on it, because and I said to him, I said, well, how do you feel about what's going on? Because he's wearing a wig, and he would he'd be off, and he said, listen, because I'll tell you, kid, he goes, I've been a lot of different things, had a lot of different points in my career. He said, it's great to go out on top. And this is a wonderful sense. It's great to go out on top. He loved that where he had arrived at the end of his life was this family, because he loved Charlene. He loved all the family cast. And I felt honored to be in his presence. Just I felt that he had that patina and depth, that gravitas, that just was a different kind of man altogether. And you really went, wow, glad I had a chance. No way. Yeah.
But rewatching, as I started rewatching the show, and I commented on how wonderful Larry Hagman was, I have to tell you, Jim Davis as well. Truly one of the greatest actors I've ever watched. And, maybe I don't know. I was so close with he and his wife, Blanche. And they had lost their daughter, Tara, was sadly killed in a car accident when she was 17. So when I met Jim when I was 17, and we would talk, and we were having dinner. It was just he and I at the hotel that we were staying at. And he said, you remind me of my daughter. I said, oh, well, what's her name? He said, well, her name was Tara, and she was your age. And I went, and he said, I always reminded him of her. And it was just, I don't know, it was
beautiful.
Just interesting. But I agree with you, Leigh. He was the soul.
Yeah.
He was the soul. He was, yes.
Yeah, he was a deep anchor. I don't know, there's those beings that are deep anchors, and everyone feels it. It's almost like you're on ship with a captain that you go, he's going to get us there. And there are actors that are that way too. And he was one of them. When you perform with him, I could go through a list of these beings that it's just an energy. It's a quality that almost like with Jim, it was salt of the earth. He was a man of integrity. He didn't BS. He told, what a man. What a real man.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's touching my heart.
I know, it's like, well, it's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Leigh, I think you had mentioned to Mary at one point that someone said, oh, Mitch had an affair or something like that, and you didn't remember it. And
what?
Oh yeah, you said that in the email.
It was
I did. I was reading one of the fan things, and it said, well, when Mitch had the affair with the older woman, and I'm going, I had an affair with an older woman. I could not remember. I thought
Evelyn Michelson, played by Patty McCormick from the Bad Seed.
Yeah, Patty McCormick. But did I?
I don't think
I don't know that you consummated anything, but
you did.
I couldn't. No, it just seems the little character that I had. It seems out of it.
You didn't. But I remember saying, Mitch, go for it. It's Patty McCormick from the Bad Seed.
You don't know what she's going to do to you if you don't do it.
Yes, exactly.
She's an icon.
He slipped and fell down the stairs.
Oops.
I don't know.
I was going to say really quick, I'm so happy that y'all came on, and I'm just the biggest fans ever. I know y'all probably hear that all the time, and I'm not trying to be rude at all, but I have to go. Today's my anniversary, and my husband has texted me 17,000 times and said, we have reservations in 25 minutes. And I was like, so I'm going to let everybody else close out, but I wanted to tell y'all thank you so much.
Can I? So you're celebrating your anniversary?
I know, girl. Lucy's is more important. I actually just said that on my text. But he knows I'm not lying.
So you just. But on this wedding show, this is your wedding anniversary?
It is. 2 years.
It is.
Well, I like that. I like that saint synchronicity.
This is my second husband. I hope this one sticks. I'm just kidding. He will. I'm kidding.
Which brings us, Charlene, to the Lucy's proclaimed South Fork wedding jinx.
Anyway. Thank y'all so much. And I hope to meet y'all one day again, or, and sometimes. But thank you again for coming on. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, girls. Happy anniversary.
Charlene, wonderful seeing you.
Thank you.
Do you think Lucy and Mitch should have been endgame with each other, or was there just too much
obviously
baggage and stuff?
Well, we got remarried, and then what happened? That was season 7.
And then you came back because he was too busy at the hospital to have time for her a few seasons later.
Oh, good Lord, Lucy. I tell you.
You came back and you were producing that thing that Sue Ellen was doing to get back at JR.
And then you
that movie.
Then you ran off to Europe with Liz Taylor's son, Michael Wilding.
Wasn't he something? Michael Wilding, yeah.
Where
he was after Callie.
Right. Where do you see these characters at this? If they were to be shown in 2021, where would Mitch be and where would Lucy be?
Sitting here talking to you. Sitting in Nashville talking to you.
Lucy's musical career took off. Plot twist.
Yes, finally. Yes.
All right. Who was actually singing in that episode? Was it you or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the Greg Evans?
Yes.
Yes. Sadly.
Okay. Because I met.
Cool.
I met Kate Mulgrew, and we talked about her episode where she was singing too, and she's like, God, they made me some singer, and I had an affair, and blah blah blah. And what the hell were they thinking? So I was just wondering if everyone did their own singing. I mean, yeah. So.
I was thinking, I know where Mitch would be now. As I said, Mitch would have become Doctors Without Borders, ends up in India doing reconstructive plastic surgery, ends up falling in love with an Indian woman and living there happily, but he died 5 years ago, unfortunately. So, but he was a good life.
I can see it. I can
see that too, yeah.
Where was Mitch when Pam needed plastic surgery after that accident?
Yeah.
Gosh.
So Charlene, I just want to say, Charlene,
no, you don't need anything.
Charlene, where's home for you?
I'm in Nashville.
Oh, okay, wonderful. How long have you been there?
5 years now.
5 years. Do you like it?
I love it here. Yeah, I cherish. My daughter got a record deal 5 years, and the record label put her out here in a one-bedroom apartment. So I came to stay with her in her apartment so I could walk the dog, do the laundry, and all that stuff while she was recording and writing and playing out. And at one point she said, I think I'm gonna have to move here. What would you think? And I went, all right, let's do it. And so I just
how wonderful. So I
love it here.
By the way, congratulations, Mama. Your daughter's so talented and beautiful and takes after her mama. And I just wanted to say, I see that on Facebook and posts, and it's just lovely to see the continuation and sort of the celebration, because we're close to our grandkids too. And I feel like
Isn't it the best? What is your little grandbaby's Leighton?
Leighton is our granddaughter, and then Caitlin had a little grandson. So we have a grandson now, and his name is Theo. Yeah, he's 4 months now. So he's
right. Okay.
And he's turning 3 years old on November 20th, and she was born 9 days after the fire hit us in Malibu, the Woolsey fire. So her middle name is Phoenix because she was the first baby born after our entire community was devastated by
Phoenix rising out of the ashes. I love it.
Yeah. So
she is
congratulations.
adorable. She is that little curly head of hair.
She defines precocious. I look at her, and actually, I don't know about the rest of the. We can get into the talk, but what's so beautiful to see is that it gives me confidence. I call it generational optimism. In a way, we always see the world falling apart and going, "Oh, was that a bad idea or what?" But then you see this continual flow, and it really reminds you these are the things that matter. This love matters. This it makes it right. This gives you the hub around which the craziness of the world can turn. But you really do see how you're passing it on. And I love to see, like with your daughter, I love to see this lineage of talent, of storytelling, of performing. Do you know that it's a deeper tradition than just us alone? And I think celebrity makes people feel very alone as opposed to part of a troupe. And family gives you that sense,
You're right. You're right. Aww.
Yeah. I'm glad this troupe is together tonight.
Thank you for joining us on the Ewing podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Y'all come back now.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you, Charlene and Leigh.
Bless.
I have nothing witty to say again this week.
Next on Dallas.
Hello, J.R. Leslie Stewart, my brother J.R. Ewing.
How do you do?
Hello. You may be back at the helm of Ewing Oil. There's a power in Dallas. You're finished. I wish we were both back in college. And there was no J.R.
So if he seeks affection and sex somewhere else, then why shouldn't I? And why shouldn't you?
They're all saying that J.R. Ewing's on the way out. Well, I'm determined to make you number one again.
I'll drink that.